The mining world of Vaeros was cold, dark, and forgotten by most of the galaxy. Its skies were always filled with thick gray clouds, and its people lived beneath the surface, digging through endless tunnels for metals no one else wanted to mine. Jalen had spent most of his 18 years down in those tunnels, his hands always covered in dust, his mind always dreaming of something more. On this day, the air was sharp with the smell of metal and stone, and the sound of drills echoed far, off in the darkness. Jalen was repairing a collapsed support beam deep in an abandoned shaft, far from the other workers. The air was colder here, and his lamp barely reached the walls. As he pulled away loose rock, his pick struck something solid, something that wasn't stone. The sound was strange, metal, but not like any he'd heard before. He brushed away, more dirt, until the shape began to reveal itself. It wasn't a wall, and it wasn't a machine. It was a chair, but nothing like the crude seats in the colony. Its frame was made of black metal that shimmered faintly as if stars were trapped. Inside it, lines of silver ran along its surface, forming shapes that seemed to move when he wasn't looking. The seat rose from the ground like it had grown there, and behind it, a tall back stretched high, ending in sharp points that looked like the crown of a king. Jalen froze, his breath caught in his throat. Every child on Vaeros had heard stories about the Star Throne, but they were just that, stories. A seat that could command the light of the stars? Impossible. No one believed it had ever been real. Yet here it was, half buried in the rock. He reached out, his fingers hovering above the cold surface. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then his skin touched the metal, and the entire tunnel shook. A sound like a deep, slow heartbeat filled the air, not just in his ears, but inside his chest. His lamp flickered, then burst into light so bright he had to shield his eyes. In that flash, he saw things. Suns burning in endless skies, fleets of ships bowing to a figure seated on the throne, and then darkness swallowing it all. A voice spoke, deep and ancient, not from the air, but from everywhere at once. "Jalen, my last rider." He stumbled back, his legs weak, his mind trying to make sense of the impossible. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice shaking. The throne's surface rippled like liquid metal, and faint light pulsed along its lines. "You have awakened me. The stars are fading. The darkness rises. You will sit, and you will command." Jalen shook his head. "I'm just a miner. I don't even know what this is." The voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You know my name. You know my purpose. The galaxy remembers me, though it hides the truth from you." As the voice spoke, a faint vibration moved through the ground, and somewhere deep below, he thought he could hear machinery starting up, machines that had slept for ages. Far above, beyond the rock, something stirred in the sky. Jalen didn't know that across the galaxy, ancient stations were lighting up, turning their sensors toward Vaeros. In the council chambers of the capital world, alarms were sounding. The signal was unmistakable. The Star Throne had awoken, and a human had touched it. Within minutes, warships were leaving their docks, heading straight for his world. In the tunnel, Jalen backed away slowly. "I didn't mean to wake you," he said. "Then why did you come here?" the voice asked. He didn't have an answer. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was fate. But as he stepped away, the throne pulsed again, and the heartbeat grew stronger. "You cannot run. The stars have chosen." A shadow moved across the mouth of the tunnel, blocking what little light remained. Jalen's skin prickled as he heard a low hum from outside. He climbed up toward the surface, heart racing, and when he emerged into the open air, his breath caught. The sky was no longer just gray. It was black, filled with the shapes of ships so huge they blotted out the clouds. A fleet hung above Vaeros, their hulls gleaming with the cold light of the council's mark. The people in the streets stared upward in silence, fear spreading like fire. Jalen felt the throne's voice in his head once more, colder this time. They come for me. They will come for you. If you do not take the throne, they will take the stars. The largest ship began to descend, its shadow swallowing the colony. Wind whipped through the streets as its engines roared. Jalen looked back toward the tunnel, toward the impossible thing hidden below. The stories had been true all along, but no one had ever told him how dangerous the truth could be. And as the first soldier's voice shouted his name from the ship's speakers, he knew the legend had just become his life. The streets of Varos were chaos. Dust and wind whipped through the colony as the council warship descended, its massive hull blocking out the dim sunlight. Jalen stood frozen in the middle of the square, the booming voice from the ship's speakers still echoing in his ears. Jalen Rinn, by order of the Galactic Council, surrender yourself immediately. People backed away from him, whispering, their eyes filled with confusion and fear. He didn't even understand why they knew his name. The throne's voice whispered in his mind, quiet but sharp, like a blade against glass. They tracked my awakening. The moment your hand touched me, they felt it. Jalen's pulse hammered. Why me? He whispered under his breath. The voice did not answer. Instead, it sent a rush of images into his head. Star maps, battles, the throne shining, with a light brighter than a sun. Then, an image of the galaxy covered in darkness, like ink spilling across the stars. His knees almost buckled from the weight of it. Soldiers in silver armor began to drop from the warship's belly, landing in the square with heavy thuds. Their faces were hidden behind mirrored helmets, their weapons glowing with blue energy. One pointed straight at him. Do not resist. You are under protective custody. The words were calm, but there was something cold underneath them. Jalen's first instinct was to run, but where could he go? Then the throne spoke again, louder, this time. If you leave me here, I will be lost. If I am lost, all will be lost. The soldiers began moving toward him. Jalen stepped back, then turned and sprinted toward the mining tunnels. Shouts rang out, followed by the high-pitched crack of energy fire. Bolts of blue light seared the air behind him, striking the ground and sending shards of rock into the air. He dove into the tunnel, the darkness swallowing him. His lamp was still lying where he had left it earlier, but now the throne itself glowed faintly, casting shifting patterns of silver light along the walls. The heartbeat he had heard before was faster now, as if it could feel the danger closing in. Sit, the throne commanded. Take the bond before they arrive. Jalen hesitated, staring at the strange patterns flowing across its surface. Footsteps echoed in the tunnel behind him, armored, heavy, getting closer. He could hear the soldiers' voices. He's down here! Move! The throne's glow grew brighter, bathing the tunnel in star-like light. If they take me, they will strip me, drain me, and use my power to control the galaxy. You cannot let that happen. Jalen's chest rose and fell in quick bursts. I don't even know what I'm doing. You will, the throne replied. The bond will show. You. The first soldier appeared in the tunnel's mouth, raising his weapon. Instinct screamed at Jalen to move, and without another thought, he leapt onto the throne. The moment he sat, the world exploded into light. The tunnel dissolved around him, replaced by an endless sea of stars. He was floating in the middle of it, his body weightless. Streams of light twisted toward him, weaving themselves into shapes, planets, ships, strange creatures, and then pouring into his mind like water filling a vessel. He could feel the throne's heartbeat merging with his own, their pulses sinking, until he couldn't tell where he ended and it began. Knowledge filled him. How to control ships without touching them, how to bend light into weapons, how to open gates between distant worlds. But it was more than just knowledge. It was a connection, ancient and unbreakable. Then the stars vanished, and the tunnel returned. The soldiers were frozen in place, their weapons half raised, as if time had stopped. Jalen stood from the throne, his hands tingling with strange energy. He looked down the tunnel toward them, and the air seemed to ripple between them. The throne's voice was calm now. "You have taken the bond. They cannot hold you unless you allow it." Jalen stepped forward, and the nearest soldier was suddenly flung backward as if struck by an invisible force, crashing into the wall. The others stumbled, shouting in confusion. Outside, the warship rumbled with movement, its engines flaring. Jalen didn't know how, but he could feel it, feel every wire, every circuit, every piece of metal in its hull. He could control it. But before he could act, the throne's voice shifted, becoming urgent. "Others are coming. Not the council. Not human." Far above the colony, breaking through the cloud cover, shapes appeared, sleek black ships with glowing red eyes. The soldiers stopped fighting and looked up, their stance changing from aggression to fear. Jalen could feel something in those ships, cold, hungry, and ancient. Whatever they were coming for him. And the throne whispered one last thing before the first shot was fired from the sky. "They were the reason I was hidden, and now they know where I am." The sky split open with fire as the black ships descended, their hulls absorbing the sunlight like living shadows. Each one moved with unnatural precision, no sound but the deep hum that made the ground vibrate under everyone's feet. Jalen stood frozen in the tunnel entrance, the throne's faint glow at his back, as soldiers in silver armor raised their weapons toward the threat above. But it was already too late. The first beam of red energy shot down, slicing through the colony's tallest tower as if it were paper. The air filled with the screams of people running, the smell of burning metal and the sharp sting of static in the wind. Jalen's heartbeat was racing, but it wasn't only his. It was the throne's too, pulsing inside his chest like a second life. "They are hunters," the throne whispered in his mind, its tone colder than before. "They were forged long before your kind. They seek me because I can end them. If they take me, the galaxy will fall." Another blast ripped through the streets, throwing dust and fire into the air. The council soldiers, who had been hunting Jalen minutes earlier, now seemed more concerned with survival. One of them, her mirrored helmet cracked to reveal sharp, green eyes, shouted toward him, "Kid, if you can move, move! We can't hold them!" Jalen didn't move. His legs felt like they were made of stone. In his mind, the throne spoke again. "You have the bond. You have the power to fight. But you must choose. Fight for them or run for yourself." The choice tore at him. These people were strangers. Some had tried to capture him, yet the thought of leaving them to burn twisted his stomach. The throne didn't wait for his answer. A sudden wave of heat rolled over him as one of the hunters' ships turned, its weapon bay opening directly above the tunnel. Without thinking, Jalen raised his hand. A shimmer of silver light rippled out from his palm, expanding into a dome around the tunnel's entrance. The beam fired and stopped dead against the barrier, sparks flying where red met silver. The soldiers froze, staring at him. "What? What are you?" one muttered. Jalen didn't know. He only knew he couldn't hold the shield for long. The throne's voice came sharper now. "Call the gate." The words meant nothing to him, yet somehow, deep in his bones, he understood. Closing his eyes, he reached into the bond. The silver light shifted, pulling away from the shield and spiraling upward. It twisted into a long, bright tear in the air, an opening that showed stars, swirling galaxies, and a world made entirely of white stone. The pull of it was like a wind dragging at his skin. The green-eyed soldier took a step toward him, shouting over the noise, "If you can get us out, do it now!" But before he could answer, the hunters reacted. 2 ships broke, formation and dove toward the tunnel, weapons glowing hotter than before. The throne's voice dropped to a whisper only he could hear. "If they follow through the gate, the white world will fall." His pulse pounded. That meant he couldn't let them through. But the only way to stop them was to close the gate before the soldiers could escape. In seconds, the first of the hunters' ships fired again. The ground shook violently, part of the tunnel collapsing in a rain of stone and dust. Jalen staggered, his shield flickering. He knew he couldn't hold it much longer. "Choose," the throne said, the single word heavy and final. "Save the soldiers and risk dooming another world, or close the gate and watch these people die." His hand trembled as he reached for the bond, the silver light surging one last time. And above, the black ship screamed through the air, closing in fast enough that he could see the strange, inhuman shapes moving inside their cockpits. The roar of collapsing stone drowned out every thought as the tunnel caved in behind Jalen, cutting him off from the soldiers. Dust and smoke choked the air, but through it the gate still shimmered, its silver edges twisting like liquid, the stars on the other side pulling at him with impossible force. The hunters' ships were almost on top of him now, their weapons glowing brighter, the hum of their engines sinking into his bones. The throne's voice cut through the chaos, low and steady. "You cannot save them all, but if you fall here, no one will be saved." Jalen's hands shook. He could still hear the shouts of the trapped soldiers, muffled through the rubble, each cry stabbing at him. He thought about running through the gate alone, leaving everything behind. But the thought made him feel like something inside would break forever. The first hunter ship dropped low, the black metal gleaming like wet stone. The cockpit's glass parted, revealing a figure unlike anything human. Tall, armor like a living shadow, eyes burning with cold blue fire. It lifted its arm, and a beam of red energy ripped toward him. Jalen didn't move away. He raised both hands and poured everything into the bond with the throne. The silver light exploded outward, not as a shield, but as hundreds of razor-thin streams that shot upward, weaving into a single colossal spear of light. With a sound like the tearing of the sky, the spear struck the ship, ripping through its hull in one blinding flash. The hunter's vessel erupted in silence, disintegrating, into ash that the wind carried away. The second ship swerved, banking hard to avoid the gate, but it was too close. The silver edge caught its wing, slicing it clean off. The ship spun wildly, crashing into the mountainside with a shock wave that split the rock. For a heartbeat, the battlefield went still. The throne's voice was quieter now, almost tired. "They will send more." This was only their hand, not their arm. Jalen turned toward the gate, its pull stronger now, as if it was impatient for him to step through. He hesitated, looking back at the rubble where the soldiers had been. Then, he felt it. Another presence. Not the hunters, not the throne. Something older, colder. A shadow moved inside the silver light of the gate, a silhouette that did not belong to the white world beyond. "You opened the way," it whispered, though no sound touched the air. "Now we all may walk." The throne's tone changed instantly, a note of fear threading through its deep voice. "Close it, now!" But the shadow stepped closer, its form warping the stars behind it. And as it emerged into the silver light, Jalen saw its face, or what was left of one. It was a mask of shattered glass, each crack holding the reflection of a different world, all burning. The shadow stepped fully through the gate, and the air around Jalen froze. Every sound, the distant fires, the crumbling stone, even the pounding of his own heart, seemed to vanish. The figure was tall and thin, its body wrapped in tattered fragments of something that might once have been armor, though it now looked more like strips of darkness held together by a faint, sickly glow. The mask of broken glass tilted toward him, and in each shard he saw a different scene. Oceans boiling, Under black suns, cities turned to bone, stars collapsing into themselves. The throne's voice, which had been steady through everything so far, trembled. "It is the Hollow Regent. You have made an enemy of the oldest power in the void." Jalen's mouth was dry. "I didn't mean to open the gate for whatever this is." The regent's voice slid into his mind like cold water, filling every thought. "You call it a throne, child. It was mine before time was counted. It will be mine again." Without warning, the regent raised one jagged hand, and the silver light of the gate twisted violently, wrapping around Jalen like chains. The pull was crushing, dragging him toward the shadow. His knees buckled as the bond with the throne flared, trying to resist. "You cannot match me," the regent said softly, "but you can serve me." The throne's energy surged, forcing the chains to loosen for a heartbeat. "He lies. His rule hollowed every world he touched. If he binds me, all will be as you saw in his mask." The pull on Jalen's body grew stronger. His vision swam. With silver and black, the light from the throne inside him clashing violently with the darkness of the regent's power. In the corner of his mind, he felt something, another voice, faint but urgent. It was the green-eyed soldier, her thoughts somehow brushing against his own. "If you can hear me, we're alive, buried, but alive. Don't let that thing through." That was all it took. Jalen gritted his teeth, planted his feet, and forced his mind into the bond. The silver light exploded out of him again, but this time it wasn't a weapon. It was a wall, a tidal wave of pure force that slammed into the regent and shoved him back toward the gate. The shadow staggered but didn't fall. Cracks spread wider across the glass mask, revealing a deeper darkness inside. "You think you can close the way," the regent hissed, "but you opened more than one door." As the words sank in, Jalen felt it, far above the colony in the black between the stars. Hundreds of other rifts had bloomed like wounds, each spilling strange shapes into the galaxy. The throne's voice was grim. The hunt was only the beginning. Now the war returns. The regent's hand shot forward again, and this time his power wasn't aimed at Jalen. It was aimed at the throne itself. The silver world inside Jalen's mind shattered as the hollow regent's power struck the throne. The bond between them flared painfully, every thread of light stretching to the point of tearing. Jalen dropped to his knees, clutching his head as waves of heat and cold slammed through him. The throne's deep voice echoed in fragments now, breaking apart like splintered stone. "Hold the bond. Do not let go." The regent stepped closer, the shards of its glass mask shifting, each showing a different disaster. A sea swallowing, a sun, a moon cracking open, a fleet of ships frozen in time. "Your bond is a leash, boy. It can serve me as easily as it serves you." He reached out, and Jalen felt the throne's presence inside him, pulled violently toward the shadow. Stars flickered and dimmed in his vision. Somewhere behind the regent, the silver gate twisted wider, and other shapes moved in the light, things without names, their forms wrong in every possible way, spilling into the world. Above the colony, the sky bled with the glow of more rifts, opening, each disgorging ships, beasts, and storms that didn't belong in this galaxy. Jalen's heart pounded as he realized the regent's words had been true. This wasn't one invasion. It was hundreds, maybe thousands, all at once. The green-eyed soldier's voice cut into his mind again, louder now, desperate. "Jalen, whatever you're doing, end it now." He didn't know how. The throne's strength was fading, the regent's grip tightening like iron. And then, through the chaos, Jalen remembered the first time he had touched the throne. How its power had surged, not when he commanded it, but when he gave it something. Not control, not submission, choice. Gasping for air, he whispered inside his mind, "I'm not holding you. You're free. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the throne roared, not in words but in raw, blinding force. Silver fire erupted from every point in the sky, racing along invisible threads between stars. The gate behind the regent shuddered. Violently, its edges splintering into 1,000 shards of light that spun like blades. The regent turned sharply, but too late. The throne's power slammed into him, tearing cracks through his mask until it exploded into a storm of glass. The shadow beneath writhed in the silver fire, its scream stretching across the rift as it was dragged back into the void. One by one, the other rifts flickered and snapped shut, their invading shapes cut off mid-step. The last thing Jalen saw before the gate sealed was the regent's hand, reaching through the shrinking light, a single shard of his mask spinning free and falling toward the ground. Silence fell. The battlefield was empty except for the smoke and the faint hum of the throne in his mind. Tired, but alive. You have ended his return. For now, it said. But a shard remains, and through it, he still sees. Jalen looked at the fragment lying in the dust, its surface showing. A world he didn't recognize yet.